Excuse me, tank, why did you pull those mobs, you idiot? Learn to play in heroics before you start tanking, you moron. Looking for a tank for a +10. Looking for a tank for a +10. Why can I never find a tank anymore?
That's right, you asked for me to play a more important role. Well, here it is. I'm about to tank to a +20 from no score, and I'm going to detail exactly how you can do this too. This is Learning on the Job, Tank Edition. In the last episode, we learned that tanking is not that easy after all. Having said that, we did manage to time our first +16 key, which is just nuts. I am super happy with the week 1 progress that we achieved last week, and to think that we're already collecting materials for that sweet 418 item level gear is just awesome. Top the week off, we managed to play other people's keys, including a Ruby Life Pools where we looted a Ruby Whelp Shell, which is actually really good for Brewmaster. This final bit of progress then with other people's keys left us with 1.4k rating and 392 item level, which I again just think is insane progress for our first week ever playing Mythic Plus on a tank. Starting off our second week then, we've got our first vault, which is going to set the tone for this upcoming week. A good vault might just make it so we can complete the challenge this week. We'll have to see how that goes. We ended up with a 408 item level belt anyway, which is just okay, it's nothing great, it's a minor upgrade, and the key that we got was a +16 knocker defensive. Let's go and see how this key goes, shall we? Spoiler alert, it did not go well. Anyway, just before this key starts, I want to quickly mention that we're changing the upload schedule. We're going to upload single episodes once a week, and that's going to be on Sundays for these series. That's going to give me more room to do other things on the channel, such as a new podcast which we're going to do, which is called This Week in World of Warcraft, and it's going to go up every single Wednesday on the channel. I'll be doing it with my brother, who's a world first raider. He's played in the MDI. He just in general has really good takes, so if you're interested, then it's linked in the description down below if you want to go and check that out. Back to the key then, we end up butt pulling and dying not once, not twice, but 3 times. Looking back on this now, I find it hilarious, but at the time I was really frustrated because I think the route's good and I could have changed some things in the way that I play, but honestly, I think it's just outside of our control. There's not much that we could have done. We go over time anyway, and honestly, we're not even that far over time, and we had 3 complete wipes, so we didn't really do that badly. Anyway, the next key that we got was a +15 Shadow Moon Burial Grounds, which bails us out here. That is a really good key, so let's go and see how well that one went. This one went so much better. I mean, Shadow Moon is always going to go better, but we only had 6 deaths, of which 4 came on an enraged Void Spawn. So the 2 Void Spawns just before this boss. And again, there wasn't much that we could do about it, we just ended up wiping. The next key that we got then was a +17 Court of Stars. Let's see how this one goes. The dungeon went pretty well then. We've had 5 deaths so far, but that's all just to frontals, and it's not really even much to do with me. We did have a butt pull of a guard plus a saber, which didn't help, but otherwise it's just been frontal deaths. And here we accidentally pull this manifest pack, and this is a really bad pack. This manifest by itself is incredibly dangerous. I think it's at least a double kick, and you need to make sure that you kick that drain magic cast. So one is about to go through here, and you'll see in a second it pretty much one-shots 2 of the players in the group. So there we go, look at that, that's a huge amount of damage that you have to deal with. I think that was actually combined Arcanist plus the manifest damage, but this is the reason why you don't want to pull these, because they are really, really bad in terms of the damage which they do to the group and the number of kicks which you have to get off. Otherwise, the dungeon actually went pretty fine. We ended up having 3 other deaths to the second boss, Telixay, but we had combat reses to get through it, and we just left 1 person dead at the end. And it went fine, right? It wasn't too bad. Again, other deaths, we ended up having some dying to the Enforcers, for example, but otherwise it was okay. Here then we got a +18 Halls of Valor. Now that is a really hard key on a fortified week, especially to tank, because there is so much tank damage coming out. So I'm not too confident, but let's see how we managed to do in a +18 Halls of Valor. If you've watched the previous pugging series, you know how much I absolutely despise Halls of Valor. Having said that, this dungeon goes incredibly well, and it's because I have to pull off so many double and triple pulls. So this first one here is incredibly hard to pull off. And we're going to see this Thundercaller. Bear in mind, I only have 390 item level here. I don't have 415 item level and a lot of HP to be able to tank this with. And we're able to do this pretty cleanly. So you can see I've already popped Fortifying Brew. We're making our way through our purifying brew stacks. We're about to pop Celestial Brew when we hit 9 stacks, right? So we've just immediately used Celestial Brew there. We're going through all of our cooldowns to be able to tank this. We're going to use Black Ox Brew any second, right? So we're purifying even more stagger. We're going to get another Celestial Brew out. And now we're going to start kiting. So as things drop below 30% HP, we need to kite because it's a raging week. So fortified raging, 390 item level brewmaster, that is not fun. So we need to get out of there immediately. We're going to pull over and we're going to finally do this Thundercaller, the one that we CC'd at the start. This just makes the pull that much easier because then we only have one mob to kick and CC, right? And you can see here, we're basically left with no cooldowns, but that doesn't matter because the next boss doesn't hurt. It does do a little bit of damage, but we can get through it just with Celestial Brew, just with Purifying Brews, right? There's no real issue with doing the next boss without CDs. So that's what you need to do as a tank. You go in, you send all of your cooldowns, and you make sure that you can do that triple pull, because that sets the tone for this Halls of Valor dungeon and whether you're going to be able to time it, because you have to do these sort of big pulls to time this key. I mean it when I say this, you have to do lots of double and triple pulls to be able to time this key, because it's incredibly tight if you just run through and pull one pack at a time. So here we are, immediately after we've killed first boss. What do? We're doing another double pull. You always need to be double and triple pulling in this dungeon to be able to time it. If you just run a straight line, you're not going to time it. So big things here again. Look, I have all of my cooldowns available. So what we're going to do, we're going to use them. If you have your cooldowns and you know it's a big pull, you need to use them as a tank. You use your cooldowns as if you're a DPS player in a big pull. You make sure that you have them and you're using them. So we're going to pop Fortifying Brew here. We're going to use a 10 stack Celestial Brew in a second, and our self-healing is just going to slowly climb here. We're also then going to use Black Ox Brew to reset our Celestial Brew, so we get even more healing out of Celestial Brew. So you'll see in a second, we're going to use Black Ox Brew again, and we're going to be able to pretty much self-sustain our way through this. Even through all of these raging mobs, we're going to make it through this pack. So that's what you need to do, right? Make sure that you're always using your cooldowns on these big pulls and do lots and lots of double and triple pulls. If you want to see the complete VODs of this, by the way, again, it's over on my second channel, link to the description down below if you want to go and see that. So we've just done a small pull, right? And now we're about to do another double pull. I'm just mentioning that you need to be careful for aggro here because I'm going to pull these 2 shield maidens. I'm going to group up another double pull. Again, this is just what you need to be doing in this dungeon. Every single pull you have to think about, I've got cooldowns. What we're doing the next double pull in the route. So here, look, I've come in with fresh cooldowns. We're going to use Fortifying Brew, right, because there's a lot of damage incoming here. And we'll use Black Ox Brew again as soon as we've used Celestial to make sure that we can self-sustain. So that's exactly what you know you're doing as a Brewmaster, and especially in these sorts of dungeons when everything's raging, you need to make sure that you have cooldowns whenever you're doing these double pulls. Look at how much my health is spiking up and down here, right? Now, I didn't actually need to use Black Ox Brew here. That was definitely a waste, because we're going to go on and do another double pull in a second. So here we pull the Purifier onto the Aspirant behind us just before Hersia. Again, this pull is just if you can tank it, it's absolutely fine to do because there's not much for the rest of the DPS players to really account for. It's just the frontals. As long as they're dodging the frontals, then they can deal with this pack. So if we can tank it, we should be doing it. Now, I'm fairly confident that I can tank this. You can see our health has been spiking up and down, but we've had Dampen Harm running. We now have Celestial Brew. We're going to get Black Ox Brew again. We're going to be able to kite once the Shield Maidens are reaching below 30% HP. And like I said, as long as you can tank it, which you should be able to, this is me at 390 item level and the plus 18, then you will be able to do this pull. After Hersia then we have 2 separate single pulls. We don't do any double pulls after Hersia. We get into Fenrir's area and we're about to pull all of these bulls. See here, I drop incredibly low. Thankfully, I managed to use Expel Harm there and it crits and heals us back to full. But I should not be turning my back to these bulls. I need to be using movement speed such as Roll and Tiger's Lust to move between the bulls and pull them together. I should not just be walking through them and let them hit them in the back. Once you've got them all grouped up though, honestly, they're pretty free because most of the time they're casting this rumbling stomp cast and therefore they're very, very easy to kite. As a full range team, this is significantly easier because that means all of them have complete uptime. As a melee, it's not quite as good because you have to move in and out of these rumbling stomps, but again, this is just free count in comparison to everything else in this dungeon. You can literally just hit them down from ranged and they will slowly die. After the bulls then and Fenrir, we only pulled a couple of wolves, and we pulled them solo. We don't pull any double pulls of wolves because they do more damage when you pull lots of them. And here we are grouping up all of these bears. These bears are incredibly good percentage again, and as long as you can tank them, it is incredibly easy for the DPS to kill these off. Now once you've got the movement speed, you don't have to do what I'm doing. You don't have to face tank them. Right, you can see I'm getting absolutely destroyed here. Instead what you can do is you can just run round at about 10 yards so they're not charging you, and then they're also not using their stacking damage ability. So here you can see I'm about to start kiting, and as long as you've got enough threat, which we have done because we've done quite a bit of damage on pull, then you can just slowly kite here, and it works much better if you do just run around in circles. You can see here I went back in with Celestial Brew, right? If you've got cooldowns, you probably can face tank them, but you honestly don't have to. With the movement speed increase, even if you're getting charged, you can just slowly run around in circles. It honestly works fine. So that would be my advice. Pull all of these bears and just kite them, and make sure you're doing it after you've killed Hersia and Fenrir, so you have this movement speed increase. After the bear pull though, that's pretty much it. We just have some bosses to kill off, and then once we've killed off the bosses, obviously the dungeon's done. You can see here we're going to time it with about 4.5 minutes left. That's crazy. We've got 390 item level, but we're close to 2 chesting and 18 Halls of Valor, which is just nuts. To be in our second week of tanking and get through a Halls of Valor like this, I was so impressed with. I genuinely did not think that we were going to be able to time this, but we did it super cleanly, and it's just up to the route. Honestly, if you do this sort of route, it makes Halls of Valor much more manageable. There's nothing crazy for the DPS to manage, right? You don't have to do loads of kicks or anything like that. It's just, can you tank it? And if you can tank it, then you're going to be able to time the key. And this is probably one of the best bits about tanking. Look at this, we just got a nice message from the mage here thanking us for the direction throughout that route, which is awesome. As a tank, you feel like the sort of focal point, the center of attention, right? The way that the dungeon's pulled is all on you, and when it goes well, it's so good to hear back and get these sort of whispers. So thank you very much, I appreciate that message. The next key that we get then is a 19 quarter stars, and this is our first opportunity to get a +20 key. Now this dungeon does not go as well as the Halls of Valor for various reasons. The first one is that I stand in a frontal, so we're doing a double pull here, and then we get clipped by this energy blast, and I did not think I was in that. That just clipped my toenails and killed me, so that's the first mistake. The next mistake is that I underestimate these mistresses, and then we also don't pull the imps at the right time, so you'll see in a second we're about to get hit by this mistress, and I'm too distracted by the Eye of the Storm. I needed to use diffuse magic there. Right, that almost just one-shot me, and then we died to the Eye of the Storm. If I had just been able to use diffuse magic there, we probably survived that, and it's a perfectly fine double pull to do. You know, I would have been able to use my leg sweep, everyone else would have been alive to kill off those imps, so that would have been fine, but again, I made the mistake there. The final thing that goes wrong then is that the hunter just leaves out of nowhere. I think that we still had enough time here. He clearly left because he didn't think that we had enough time, but we need to kill this pack, we need to kill an enforcer, a mini-boss, and then we have to do the bosses in the minigame. Having said that, the bosses in the minigame on a fortified week should take somewhere between about 5.5 and 6 minutes. So that means we need to do the last, well, we don't even need to do 20% of the trash, right? Because there's the mini boss as part of the minigame. So we need to do 15% of the trash and a mini boss in 3 minutes. That's more than achievable, but he just leaves because he thinks that the key's bricked, which is really frustrating because obviously this would have given us a +20 key. I don't know whether we would have been able to time the +20, but that means we would have been able to get a 20 into the vault for next week, right? That would have been awesome. But anyway, we deplete this, so let's go and see how the 18 goes. This dungeon went even worse. You can see here we have 18 deaths, and we're about to pull Tilixay with 7.5 minutes left, but we're still going to be able to time this key. You will see in a second that we time it with 1 minute to spare. So that means that we could have pulled Tilixay with 6.5 minutes left, and we still would have been able to time the key. So looking back at this, it just completely tilts me that that hunter left. It was a timed key. We had the easiest part of the dungeon to do on a fortified week, and he left. We even had a couple of DPS in here that weren't pulling great single target numbers, whereas in the other dungeon, we actually had some great single target pumpers, so the dungeon would have gone even smoother and we might have been able to do it in about 5.5 minutes. So anyway, I've gone on about that too much. Not that it matters, we timed this and we get a 19 Temple of the Jade Serpent, which is just a dead key. I'm not joking when I say that, it is a completely dead key because Raging and Fortified is awful in Temple. So we're about to go and do other people's keys and round out the week with other plus 16s to get some gear together. We ended up just doing some Shadow Moons to get a couple of the concentrated primal focuses, which would allow us to craft a 418 weapon. So this is the first one, this is the second one, and this is us finally getting our 418 main hand weapon, which is a huge upgrade and takes us to 396 item level, much closer to that 400 which we want to be at to do our plus 20s next week. So at this point, I know that I've got a bit of time left in the week to do a few more dungeons if I would like to, and we don't have that much score because we're missing a few dungeons, and we need score to be able to upgrade gear with Valor. So although we're at 396 item level, if we can get a good item from the vault next week and we can spend our Valor, then I know we're going to be able to hit that 400 item level mark. But to be able to spend the Valor, we have to have the score. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do 3 dungeons. We're going to do a temple, we're going to do an academy, and we're going to do a Ruby Life Pools to round out the score for the week and hopefully bring us ever so closer to reaching that 2k mark and upgrading our gear to that sweet 415 item level. We end up timing a 16 Temple of the Jade Serpent, a 16 Algathar Academy, and then a 16 Ruby Life Pools to leave us with 2.1k score overall. I am so happy with what we've managed to do in this week. I genuinely can't believe that we're already timing things like a plus 18 fortified Halls of Valor. I'm not joking when I say this, I think that might be one of my best achievements in WoW, and I've had cutting edges, you know, we're getting up to the 0.1% title in Mythic Plus on my main. I really do think though that doing that plus 18 Halls of Valor on my second week playing a tank might just be one of my proudest moments. I was so happy with how well that Halls of Valor went. In terms of the overall progress though, we're getting close to 400 item level, which is my main goal. This week was pretty good. We might have been able to time it with these affixes and we might have been able to do a plus 20, but next week is actually not too bad. A Tyrannical Grievous week is a bit awful for healers, bursting there as well, bad for healers, but for tanks, honestly, it's not that bad at all. So maybe next week is the week where we manage to time our first plus 20 and complete this challenge. I want to aim for 400 item level first. If we reach 400 item level, then I'm happy to start trying to get into those plus 20s. We'll be starting off with the plus 18 key, so it's not going to take us too many keys to get into those plus 20s, and if we get there, man, I will be super excited to complete this challenge in 3 weeks on a fresh tank. Anyway, hopefully you have enjoyed this week's episode. If you have, if you want to drop me a thumbs up and a subscribe, you will see more of this content in the future. If you want to support me beyond that, you could also head over to my Patreon. I offer some things in return if you want to go and check that out. And finally, if you want to get in touch, the best way is through my Discord, which again is linked in the description down below. Anyway, hopefully you have enjoyed it. If you have, we will see you guys in the next one. Peace.